Pamela Nellen here from Coaching for Champions. This is a performance story. Sometimes, when we shift a couple of degrees to the right or left, we find new doors open wide that offer rich fulfillment. You might come to a point in your career where something happens and you realize you need to make that decision. Closing the door to what no longer works provides a plethora of possibilities when you hold on to what you love and stay open. I was 17 and in a ballet training program in New York City at Harkness House. During the partnering class, I was becoming more and more frustrated at my below average showing with my kind partner. It was due to the intense pain in my feet. I had ongoing, often bloody blisters from the daily wear of point shoes. And my default was to wrap them up and push through. But because of that pain, I was not free to perform the way I knew I could. I definitely had the technique and the feeling. This condition was to be silently endured if a girl wanted to be a ballerina, and still is true. I felt bad for my partner that day. I watched another girl who was dancing freely, and my sadness and frustration made me realize I was at a decision point. Somehow I finished the class. When I had changed and walked out onto the street, I knew it was not going to get any better with my feet the way they were. I couldn't put on those point shoes again. I was depressed and down for the count. I knew it was the shoes. Point shoes have unforgiving toe boxes, which are essential for a ballerina to dance on point. My big toes are the longest toes on my feet. My feet were not square, which I felt would have made them able to evenly support my body weight in the shoes. At least that's what I saw in my fellow ballerinas. Trying to explain what that pain was like to my poet friend, I said, it's kind of like having to continue on a 26-mile hike in boots that have rubbed blisters on all your toes, and you have to keep hiking anyway, or you won't get home. Half in tears and digging deeper frown lines into my face, I walked down the street, never to return to Harkness House. I should have given the managers an explanation. After all, they had given me the scholarship, but I did not. It was just too humiliating to simply state, I quit, though I'm sure they would have understood. The facts were clear. The shoes severely curtailed my ability to soar and go over those big mistakes that Madame Danilova had so seared into me when I was 13 at the New York City Ballet School. And that's another story. It was time to face the fact that those shoes and my feet were not a fit. I breathed a sad sigh from letting go of what wasn't working. It wasn't the walking away that was the issue because I had given 100% of my energy every day for 10 years. I was simply at that point. The issue was for me that I could not see that my ability and my love of dance could have a better outcome. So although I was really sad, I felt somewhat lighter as I walked away from the intense pain and the trainee program and went for a long walk in no particular direction down the streets of New York. One can walk for miles in this way, and that was the nice thing about Manhattan. So I just kept walking. You see, when I was training, I had no tools to sustain myself internally through all the twists and turns and the inevitable challenges that occur on the performance track. I went off reluctantly to the University of Utah because first my parents insisted that I go to college. And second, that school had a fabulous dance program. Of course, I was a dance major. Nothing else was a reason to go to college at that point. I loved the teachers and the opportunities to perform and grow as a dancer. I loved the mountains and the more relaxed atmosphere in the western part of the US. I stayed with ballet for my freshman year because that was my default. And I had the good fortune to take classes with William Christensen, the director of Ballet West. I was still, of course, enduring the blisters on my toes as I performed in the corps for a number of performances, but it was worth the pain to be dancing with a professional company. But I was hanging on past the time to something I was finished with. Maybe I clung to a bizarre hope that I could somehow change what could not be changed, my feet in those shoes. It was like locking myself in a chest and hoping I would end up swimming in the ocean. But dance was my life. Thank God I discovered concert modern dance in my sophomore year. Bill Evans was my savior. He was so joyful in his teaching that it was easy to catch the wave. And it was serendipity to be dancing barefoot. I could finally dance the way I knew I was capable of. And Bill challenged me to expand my ability and go through my perceivable boundaries as we went through the year. That's the mark of a great teacher. Bill is about 6'4", slim, with a chiseled face befitting of the inspiring teacher that he is. And at the same time, he's bursting with enthusiasm over his love of dance. It shone out through every pore. He would bound through the door to the studio and begin the class. My energy doubled as my boundaries expanded. I was inspired also by the exquisite performances given by RDT, Repertory Dance Theater, that he was a part of. They were in residence at the university. And there were well-known choreographers who would come and make pieces for them. And Bill also choreographed a couple of things. All of that increased my passion. I would reclaim my career. I loved Kathleen McClintock as she smiled one day while we were executing her choreography, and she was telling us each to catch the lights with the sequins on our chests and make them sparkle. So I took the shoes off once and for all. My toes could point and flex and wiggle and squiggle, and bare feet meant freedom to let it fly. I was dancing like never before. Finally, I was liberated to express what my body wanted to express. The following summer, I was hired by a regional company. I accepted the offer. Yeah, it was a professional company starting up, but as soon as I started on the first day, I realized the director, number one, didn't know anything about directing a professional company, and number two, he didn't even know how to dance. Somehow he had gotten a Rockefeller grant. The year was a bust, and the company folded. My motto has always been make a choice and keep going. I didn't go back to the university where I could have had a degree and been a solid teacher at the end of my university education there. Instead, I returned to New York. What I have come to understand is what my beloved guru told us some years later when I was under his direction, that everything happens for the best. There really are no mistakes. You see, if I had returned to Utah, I would not have met the master who totally transformed my life inside and out, nor would I have been able to help high achievers with what I learned from him. I auditioned for Twyla Tharp, who was extremely famous even at that time, and I got a round of applause when I walked off the stage. They hired the girlfriend of a company member. But the silver lining was I knew I was good. Then I was taking class at Merce Cunningham's, which I did every day, and someone was watching me. He invited me to dinner, and I had no idea what it was about. Then Douglas asked me to be in a performance work he was creating, which was an ongoing opportunity. I was thrilled. I loved being a part of Lazy Madge. First, I got to wear sneakers and jeans to perform, or whatever I wanted. It was the exploration of the performance space which I loved without any boundaries, playing with form and movement for its own sake, and the element of chance which made every performance unique among the 10 dancers. I love the possibilities for play with the variety of personalities and styles we each had. For each performance, we had the freedom of using whatever we chose from a long, personally tailored phrase, with or without consecutive order, as a fragment or in total from any place on the stage, interacting with no one or whomever was there, facing any direction, and then stepping off the performance stage at will. It was full of surprises and fun. I remember laughing in one performance when Michael, who came up to about here on me, came barreling toward me. I laughed too, and we flew off together around the stage and then ricocheted off each other in our various directions. Our energy fed off each other as we danced. I had a blast. And I loved the ability and the freedom to create a performance on the spot using my movement phrase. Every performance was really a kinetic work of art that was never solidified, always changing. It kind of reminds me now of the mandalas that the Buddhist monks make that out of chalks, the beautiful designs, and then in a moment they wipe them away, which shows the impermanence of all existence. It was a kind of meditation, fully unfolding as it went and finishing when it would. My poet friend has asked me, when do you know whether to let go? I can't answer that for another creative. What I can say is ask yourself whether what you're doing is feeding your heart and soul. Are you continuing to grow, or are you at an impasse? You will know. The main thing is that there is more than one way of doing what you love. You may be only 2 steps away from immense freedom and joy in doing what you love to do. And if in letting go, you don't yet see what's next, remember this one thing. When there is love for what you do, you are a magnet for miracles.